Hey everyone, Captain Jack here. In this video, I'm interviewing Marek Rosa, the CEO of King Software House and the main man behind Space Engineers. The reason I'm doing this interview is to gain a little bit more knowledge of how the multiplayer update for Spaces went down and what we're looking forward to in the future of the game once they move past this multiplayer update. Marek answered some really good questions here. Now one thing, I do apologise for the audio quality in this recording. Unfortunately, Keen were having a bit of an issue transmitting to me. Their Wi-Fi signal kept dropping out, so we had to take the call on Marek's phone eventually, so it's a little bit staticky and a little bit hard on the ears when you're listening to it. I'm going to try and mark some key points down below in the description, but I do hope you enjoy. I'll be answering any questions down below in the comments, but as usual, once you've listened to all of this, or if you just listen to certain parts, again, I'd love a discussion with you about the game, what's coming to it, what's been done, and certain things that have been discussed in the comments down below. I really want to get a discussion going about the future of Spaces, how it's going, how the multiplayer update's gone. You basically get what I'm saying. I'm going to let Mark jump straight into this interview here. I've listed out my questions. I took most from the community and a few from myself and a few from my own community, and we're going to pitch them together to Mark and see how they go. I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy the questions. As usual, I'd appreciate some feedback down below. Enjoy.
So hello Jack, I'm Marek Rosa, the founder and CEO of King Software House, where we created Space Engineers and Medieval Engineers and also Minor Wars.
Excellent. So I'm going to jump into the interview here, basically taking straight off. So to begin with, members of the community have asked me to pass along their thanks to yourself and the development team for such a great multiplayer update for Space Engineers, as it has brought much needed improvements and reignited people's excitement to play the game once again. So I just thought I'd pass that one along to yourself.
Thank you very much.
So, question number one. With the multiplayer update now released, how well do you think the update actually went? Like, how did it go down your side?
So the multiplayer update went very well. I would say it reached our expectations, or it reached basically where we were hoping it to go.
The community are very happy with it as well, so you can definitely see it went down super well. I just also wanted to touch on the surprise of a female engineer in the trailer and being added to the game. It was quite exciting for a lot of the community. What made you and the team finally decide to add her into the game?
Well, basically we knew that the community wants it and we wanted to make the community happy, so it was already in our plan, I would say more than half a year ago, maybe even a year, if I'm not wrong. And we started to work on it right after the visual tweak update, maybe even during it, if I remember correctly. So again, we had this, we have this feedback site where people can vote for wanted features, and the female was on top. And we also knew people wanted, so we wanted to make them happy, so we added female engineer.
Because I think you hinted at it towards when we did the last interview a couple of months ago, where the question was raised once again, and I think you did almost hint at it in that interview, so little bits of hints there to what was coming.
Yeah, but I didn't want to say it explicitly or say it as it is, because we still wanted to keep it as a surprise.
Of course.
Yeah, and then people were really curious about the female engineer and pushing, and so for me it was quite complicated to dodge the questions.
Of course. Well, moving on. So let's talk for a moment about the new experimental mode that's in Space Engineers. A lot of the community have become concerned that features like air tightness, pressurization are now being sidelined from the game and won't be worked on again. I've seen quite a lot of community posts about this. Would you be looking to revisit these features later this year, and will pressurization make a big return to the game at all?
So to be completely honest, I don't think we will look on this at the end of this year, because we have other priorities, and in the team we cannot work on all these things that we would want to work. I think that we will work on pressurization and air tightness and all these things in the future, in long-term future, just not right now. And because really our main priority for this year is to get the game into solid state and basically to get out of early access. And we have been there for 5 years, and it's really time to get the game out of early access, and then we can continue expanding and adding things and everything. And it's about prioritization. It's not about us not loving some feature or having different preferences for this or that. It's basically just a strict logical fact that we cannot focus on everything, and we really need to pick where to focus on.
Of course. Fair enough. I think that's going to reassure a bit of the community there, learning that, hopefully it will be worked on in the distant future anyway, as soon as Space is out of early access at least.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, So, regarding the recent update, will we be seeing quick hot fixes and bug patches opposed to seeing it all fixed or any bugs fixed in the next major update, which could be many months away? So, I think you actually did release a hot fix today after I wrote this question, so you might have already answered that one.
Yeah, there are already 2 hotfixes, and I just discussed this with guys, and we are planning 1 or 2 minor updates where there will be, I would say, fixes of bugs that are less hot as the hotfix bugs. And so, for example, what was there? Some minor movement issues, something with the security, and few other things. Really minor things. So basically, these things people will not have to wait until the next major, which will come in a couple months. They will get it minor pretty soon, and maybe there will be also some other hot fixes in between.
Excellent to hear. I'm sure it's going to reassure a lot of the community. So, will we ever see another round of multiplayer improvements, like big multiplayer improvements? For example, bringing the player cap up to 32, so where it's stable, instead of the 16 players it's sat at now?
So even now, as you know, many people play with 32, 64 players, and if they know what to do, they don't have performance issues. But officially, we would like to stick, at least for now, to our recommended settings. And again, it's just a question of priorities and everything. Like, I'm quite sure that if we really wanted, we can optimize the game and get be able to guarantee even higher numbers. But now we need to focus on something else. And I think in the future, the game, and this is our long-term plan, will be able to support many more players than just 64. But again, we will need to tackle it as very specific problem and focus on it, the whole team focus, and then we will do it. But it will not be that soon, but it will happen sometime in longer future.
Okay, so that's good to hear that you've got plans to hopefully extend it. I think also it's a good place to start at with 16. You know, we can definitely get 16 people now. So there's always hopeful to look forward to the future where we can have 32 and 64 and even bigger than that, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so with the release of multiplayer, how well do you think the keen multiplayer servers you are hosting yourself are doing in terms of introducing new players to multiplayer?
I think it's good because new players now have a higher guarantee that they will end up on well-run servers with good hardware and that are administered by our people and so on. This doesn't mean, of course, that the community servers are not any good, because they are, but we are just increasing the chance that the person will not end up on like bad running server or something like this. So I think this is good. And what we also saw in the analytics is many players are coming back and trying Space Engineers again. So in recent days, I think we didn't have that many new players. It's more like old players coming back and playing the game again. Of course, there are some new players, but nothing unusual. I would say like the normal number of new players. So maybe a little bit more, but nothing strange. So again, I think the official servers increase the chance that the player will end up in good, guaranteed conditions, working conditions, and will have good experience with the game, and then will come later back.
Excellent. I think I saw on the Reddit as well that a lot of people from the old days of Spaces said they'd come back to try out multiplayer, so you can definitely see players are returning for it, as you just said there, which is good for the game.
Yeah, that's very good. That's actually, it's one of the things that we were hoping for, but we're not sure if it will happen, but luckily it happened, so that's good.
Awesome. So following on from a previous question there, have you and the team come to a conclusion on how the servers hosted by yourselves will operate in the future? Something maybe like pay for access? I've seen a lot of discussion around this currently.
Yeah, that's one option. Like maybe people would pay some monthly fee. That's one option. Another is to keep it free and basically we'll pay for the servers if it will not be too much. And there are also other options, more crazy, like people can be buying some maybe special skins or something like this, or maybe even voluntary donations. And at this point, I would say, like myself, I'm just putting all these possible ideas in my head, and we will see in a couple of weeks how it behaves. Maybe we will see that the official servers are not actually that much important as we thought. So, maybe we'll stop them. Maybe we'll see that we actually don't need so many of them, and the costs will be nothing major. So we'll just keep them running and save the trouble also to ourselves with finding out how to monetize them and so on. So right now it's not such a big deal for me. We'll see in a few weeks, basically by looking how people, new players, how they are using the servers.
Of course. Now on the note there of community servers, I know a few community server admins are looking to get their servers verified for the community, as we previously discussed in the live stream the other week. How would they and other community hosts go about getting their servers verified by yourselves? Is there somewhere they can go to apply, or is it an email address or something?
We will announce the procedure for this in near future. And in the meanwhile, I think the simplest would be to send email to support@kineswh.com and get to Jesse and basically start the discussion. I think that's the easiest.
Excellent. So I'll make sure to leave all those links down below in the description so people can go and click on them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Now, I think one of the amazing features of this new update is the ability to walk around on ships and vehicles while they're moving in either space or atmosphere. With this ability now in the game, would we ever see the return of blocks like ladders or other features for maneuverability around vehicles and spaceships?
So basically you're asking mostly about the ladders, right?
That's the big community question.
Yeah. Again, this is one of the things where I would not want to spoil the surprise, but also I would not want to promise anything, at this stage. I would just keep it that I think in the long-term future or in some future, there will be ladders coming back to space engineers because they are, for some reason, very important to space engineers community. And we would like to make them happy. But I don't want to promise any specific day. It's more like, I think they will come back to space engineers someday, sometime in the future. And if they do, we would keep it as a surprise, until last moment.
So this kind of wraps into my next question here. Looking forward to the future of space engineers, you have spoken previously about wrapping up the game, that it's feature complete and out of early access. When this does happen in the inevitable future, will the game keep receiving new content / support, or will it be officially left alone forever? I think you kind of answered this one earlier by saying things will still be added to it, but would you like to expand on it a bit more?
Yeah, so I think we need to understand a few things, that when space will be out of early access, there are basically like two directions. One is to work on spin-offs or completely new products, or maybe Space Engineers 2 or something like this. And the other route, parallel with this one, is to keep updating, maybe hotfixing Space Engineers, maybe adding some very simple content here and there, or maybe going even further, doing some, let's call it DLCs or something that will give some very specific goal to the gameplay. And so we have these two routes, like one big one, starting something revolutionary, something new. Another one is to build on top of what is Space Engineers for some time. And I think we'll actually go with these both directions. In the months, like right after the game will leave early access, I think we'll go the second route, which will be updating, fixing the game here and there, adding some maybe minor content, and thinking about how to add some very specific goals to the game. And here I really want to be also like transparent and say that we'll need to think how to monetize these things. So I don't want to now say specifically about it will be this or that. It's just like we as a studio also need to be thinking about how to keep making money on products that we are developing, because now it has been 5 years developing one game, without any new revenue stream, if I don't count medieval engineers. And of course, it's not sustainable for the future, and especially if you want to be doing very experimental games that we really want to be doing. So we really will need to be thinking about which updates to the game will be free and which updates will be somehow paid. So regarding the support after the early access, to wrap this up, I think there will be some support, and there will be also a long-term work on some revolutionary additions to V-Rage engine and to Space Engineers and to this whole engineering genre that we are building here.
Excellent to hear. It's great to hear that the game isn't just going to be left as soon as it leaves early access, as I think a few people were kind of panicking about that. So it's great to hear some reassurance there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So survival is a big factor as space engineers. I think most people play it, or more people play it rather than creative mode when it comes to multiplayer. With the improvements in multiplayer allowing more people to survive together, do you think we'll see improvements / new features to upgrade survival gameplay in the future, i.e. more survival goals?
Yes, something along those lines. I don't want to start promising specific things because we're actually like right after this multiplayer update finished, last week. This week we started to design the next major update, and this topic is actually like the main theme in this topic. So what we are doing right now is that we are reviewing the game. We are reviewing some, let's call it experimental development branches that we had here in the team, and thinking how to connect all these things together so that we can finish the game in a reasonable time, and also the final product is what we were dreaming of in the beginning. So even I don't know exactly what there will be, what there will not be, what we will add on top of what is already in the game. We'll see next couple days and weeks, but it will be along this topic of survival. That's basically the topic. Let's call it like that. Many of these things that we are discussing in the team right now are spinning around the topic of survival.
So the next major update is most likely going to be survival orientated in that case.
Yeah, even though, as you can probably feel, I'm trying to avoid calling it
of course.
survival overhaul, but because I don't want to set people expectations maybe too high, to think that we will overhaul the whole thing, total change or something like this. Because myself, I'm more thinking in terms of balance the things as they are, and if there are some rough edges, just clean them. Something like that.
It's just something that you and the team are currently considering before definitely setting forward, I think is the best way to describe it.
Yeah. And also we couldn't really focus on this in last, maybe even a year, because last 6 months we focused really on multiplayer. Before that, there were other things. So we really need to even freshen up our memories. Even during today's meeting, we had to actually do some heavy brainstorming to kind of remember, what was the idea with this one or this one, because there are many things, many systems in space engineers, everything is connected somehow with everything. And sometimes you change something somewhere and you are risking that people will be upset because you are changing mechanisms that they were used to, or actually breaking something. So we really need to do some thorough analysis.
Of course, great to hear. So my next question kind of builds into the previous one there. Do you ever see the game having expanded selection of blocks that are already in the game? So for example, different weapon sets building on the current ones that are already there? Or is this something which will be touched on at a future date?
I would say in the future date.
It's
something that definitely I would want. For example, yesterday I was playing this game. I think it's called The Hunt or Hunter, something like this from Crytek. Hunt the Showdown. Yeah. And they had these bear traps and stuff like that. And of course, when I play a game like this, I immediately start thinking this would be so cool to have it. I'm not saying in Space Engineers, but something like this, so we can be playing some warfare kind of thing, setting traps, using new types of weapons, building new types of weapons, and so on. It would be cool. So definitely I myself want to do something like this in the future. And there are huge possibilities. And basically the reason why we build this whole Space Engineers and VRage and all these things is to allow this thing to be able to build it on top of what we already have, and basically to keep it expanding forever. That was the basic idea. I think what we have can support this idea forever. I don't think there is any limit to this principle. The only one, of course, is with the complexity of the code and of the game increases also the chances that you break here something, there something. It's much harder to maintain, much harder to test. But we also have some ideas how to improve the robustness of individual components inside Space Engineers for the future, or in VRage for the future. So again, this was maybe a longer answer than you wanted, but in principle, I definitely would want to add new blocks, new types of blocks, and even actually kind of like take some stuff from medieval engineers, get it to space engineers, or whatever that game will be. It doesn't need to be space engineers, of course, because it wouldn't make sense to put medieval stuff to space engineers. And yeah, I definitely want to work on this.
That's excellent to hear, because I think a few people now have expressed their opinions on the fact the weapon set, for example, in SE is a bit bland, shall we say, without mods. Obviously, remember a fantastic modding community out there which introduced a lot of weapons, but it's good to hear you maybe will be considering this in the near future or the extended future anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And for example, one weapon that I'm actually missing or one type of weapon is these hand weapons, that something you are holding in your hand and just smashing stuff. And I'm not saying that it's really important for fighting or something like this, but for me, it's very important for the feeling of interaction with the world, because the only way how you can interact with the world, with space, of course, it's like they're huge, like you can build ships, crash them and everything, but you are kind of not doing many of these things with your hand. You can do it with grinder or welder or shooting stuff, but just like holding something in your hands and smashing, stuff, you cannot. And for me, it would be actually cool to add this thing into the game. And not because you really need it, but because it can give you this impression of being there, this immersion and control and feeling of the interaction that you are actually influencing the world. I think it's very good. So this is just one example. But of course, there can be another examples like better handguns, grenades, these traps, landmines, for example, various maybe AI weapons, like this stuff that some people, including us in Good AI, are trying to ban, like automated weapons. But actually, maybe we can put them to space engineers. So, yeah, there are many, many possibilities.
Interesting. So just moving on to the next question here. Going back to the early access and Spaces leaving early access, do you foresee a date when the game will eventually leave it? Something like this year or maybe later next year?
Yeah, this is a good question. I don't know if we can answer this right now, but I would tell you that, because I'm really like, as I know our community, I'm quite worried that if I say something, it can lead to panic or not. So we need to really think how to communicate to this community. Before that, what I can say is that it will be like shorter term, like not longer term, because we don't want to stay in the early access for another year or so. We really want to get out and then continue upgrading or extending the game. But staying in early access is, well, there are a few disadvantages. One is maybe that some people will not buy a game if it is in early access, just, by the principle. Another is that, what else? Saying that we are out of early access also means that the core things in the game must work well, as we wanted them. And there is no compromise for this, that, like this thing here is not finished because, like it's still just work in progress. No, if it is out of early access, all things must be on certain level of quality. And also what is important is that if you want to be adding new, or if you want to be extending the game, if you are extending something that's already finished, I think it's a better position than if you are extending something that's still not finished, because then there is this assumption that you are going to be changing this one work in progress thing forever, and we cannot be in early access for another 20 years. That's just not possible.
Of course. So it's great to hear. I'm pretty sure it's going to put some community concern to rest there. Now, the past few months since our previous interview, you did mention how Spaces would eventually, or your focus would move on to another game, as we previously discussed in this interview. And some people unfortunately took away the opinion that the game was going to be abandoned from that, which obviously with this multiplayer update isn't the case at all. And obviously speaking in this interview, we've seen there's still plenty of future content coming to SE, so it's nowhere near being abandoned. But you spoke about the first installment, which is the current game, and then suggesting a Spaces 2 might be on the horizon, or any other genre of like engineering games. Would you like to expand on this a little bit more?
Yes, I can. So as I said in one of the previous answers, the future after Space 1 leaves early access is in two directions. One is to be working on more revolutionary changes to V-Rage, maybe Space 2, maybe some other engineers and so on. And the other direction is to be working on some, let's call it like expansions or easier to do spin-offs of Space Engineers, but maybe expansion is actually better. I would call it like that. And I think we'll focus in the short term, like let's say in terms of months after leaving the relaxes, I think we'll focus on these expansions because they make more sense. And also, it's like finally after all these years, we would finish the core of Space Engineers. So it would be not stupid, but kind of waste of resources to move to not build on top of it and give people something, some specific game modes and things to do, and to kind of just move on another big thing. I think in that moment we'll need to stop for a time, do some expansions, and then move on another big thing. And this another big thing can be, of course, Space Engineers 2, where we can tackle new technology challenges, like some new features for the engine, maybe new type of armor blocks, how you build chips. We have many ideas in my backlog. I mean, it's kind of like infinite document. Then there can be different type of engineers that I'm thinking of, and also very interesting for me. And I was kind of talking about this even years ago. I don't want to maybe spoil too much, but imagine that engineering world or engineering game in a world of magic and fantasy, or engineering game in a world of much further future than what we have in Space Engineers. So we would be able to put their technology that we kind of are avoiding for Space Engineers because it would be too sci-fi. And we would be able to put this technology there. Like maybe time travel, maybe doing some things, changing the space, behavior of the space, and so on. But again, I don't want to spoil every little idea that we have for this game.
Of course.
I think it would be really cool. And in my opinion, it can be even more revolutionary than Space Engineers because these games would allow us to put their mechanics that for some reason we didn't add to Space Engineers. So that's another way how to continue. And then, of course, there is even a bigger picture thing, and that's connect all these possible engineering genres into one big game where people will be creating their own universes, setting their own rules, and that's it. That's basically the end game.
Excellent. Well, it's good to hear you've got plenty of plans for the engineering genre there and that are keen on going away from games anytime soon. So I'm pretty sure it's going to put the community to rest on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, rounding this off, accessibility to the game is big for players, especially with the multiplayer update now. Previously, we have seen the Xbox One edition of the game being announced back in 2014, I believe. Has there been much development progress on the game since we last spoke? Members of the community have been becoming quite concerned and skeptical of its development. If you could share any progress of the Xbox One edition, it would be great, as quite a few people are asking about it.
So there is progress. It's keep going. But of course, as our priorities were somewhere, in different places like multiplayer, our basically focus was there. So it's still in works, and I think we'll release it. But at this point, I don't want to promise any date. Like this is what didn't change. It's still work in progress. There are not major issues. It's just like it needs some time, and some people are working on this. And so I would say people should still feel the hope that one day there will be Xbox One for Space Engineers.
Of course. Do you think any time this year we might see anything from the Xbox One edition, or is it still under wraps at the minute?
Maybe, but I'm not. I would not want to promise this.
Of course.
Well, definitely not final game. That would be too quick. Maybe some demo, but again, I don't want to promise this.
Of course. So my final question comes around again to accessibility. From a live stream when we spoke a few weeks back, you mentioned something about UI improvements to the game. Would this fall into the previous question about making the game more accessible for new players and existing players? So there's cleaning up the UI and rounding it off.
Yes. And this is basically what we are discussing even today, is to not a big changes, because that would be also kind of like risky at this stage of the project, but looking on the rough edges that are in the UI right now and cleaning them up, adding some kind of context help or context sensitive menu. I would not even call it menu. Basically making the UI to have less elements but still providing the same functionality, which can be done by having better in-game help, context sensitive help, or making the game a little bit more context sensitive. So this is one thing. Another is what we are going to look on are the default scenarios that are in the game and the way the player actually learns how to play the game one thing after another. So this is a big thing that we are looking on in single player and also in multiplayer. So yeah.
Excellent.
These are basically the main things we are working on right now.
That sounds really good. I think a lot of people are going to like that as well, just to see the game getting polished as we move closer to the end of early access, which is quite cool.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So one last question, I just had to slip it in. Previously in, I think it was last year or the year before, we saw things like hydrogen power and wind power be teased to us, and even another tool at some point. Whatever happened to those projects? Did they just turn not to work out for the game and they were scrapped, or are they still on the table for a later date?
Well, they definitely are still on the table for a later date. The question is when. And to be honest, they are one of the things that we are reviewing right now in this moment.
Oh, interesting. So this would build into the next major update. Obviously, you can't say too much just yet. So it's good to know those ideas are still out there and being thought of by you and the development team, because I think a lot of people did think that they had just gone and was never going to be touched ever again.
Yeah, so definitely we are looking on them. I don't want to promise if they will be part of the next update or not. You know, that's the question for next few weeks for us to analyze and decide. But definitely in some form they will be in the game sometime in the shorter or longer future.
Sounds excellent. So I think that kind of wraps us up there for this interview. Is there any final points you'd like to make to the community regarding the game, regarding the multiplayer update, just to wrap us up here?
Well, I would say thank you for all the actual stories and pictures and videos that have been coming in, and it's been really encouraging to hear seeing some of the things that weren't possible before the update, and seeing players, visit and be able to do things they weren't able to do before. I mean, for those who are having issues, I would still really encourage them to use the new support.keensoftwarehouse.com, which is our new support site, and that's the best place for ideas and bugs. And I thoroughly recommend that people take a look at that website. So that would be probably from my part, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also very thankful for people who participated in the public tests, and in general, people who play the game now and give us good comments or like reviews or just nice messages on Twitter or Reddit or under videos and all these things, or people who are creating the videos like you, Jack, and basically sharing this hype. Yeah. So
excellent.
Thank you.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up here. It's been a pleasure interviewing you today, and we'll leave it there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
So rounding that interview up there with Marek, we got quite a few important details about the future of Spaces, where it's heading, where Keen Software themselves are actually going as well. There's quite a lot of important details there. I'm probably going to create another video analysing this interview fully to save boring on any more information here, but I think we've got most of the key stuff out here. I hope you guys in the community and my audience as well found this interesting and informative. I try and do my best for these game dev interviews. I am not the best. I am not a professional journalist or interviewer whatsoever. So any feedback you can give to me is greatly appreciated. The reason I do these interviews is so I can actually help the community out quite a lot. I feel like if I have the power to do it, I probably should do it, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm using the influence I have, what little I do, to reach out to the game developer, which is Keen Software House, and ask some questions from the community. If you saw, I put a Reddit post up basically asking for questions. I also tweeted it, I gave it in my Discord, and I think I gave it in the Keen Discord as well. So if you'd like to see me do future game developer interviews with space engineers or even another company, suggest it down below in the comments and follow me on my social channels to be in the lines of when I actually ask these questions to the community. It's the best we can do. But yep, to wrap it up fully, an amazing interview there by Marek. I do apologise once again about the audio quality. It was out of my hands for this. Usually I like professional settings. But in regards to the information he's given us, I will be creating a follow-up video probably next week once I've had a chance to analyse all the information and give you a deeper understanding of what Marek has actually said, especially when it comes down to the survival overhaul, which obviously looks like it's going to be the next major update as he suggested. I personally can't wait for that. It's going to be quite cool. But I hope you guys did enjoy this video. As usual, a like rating wouldn't be a hit or miss, so feel free to drop one if you did enjoy it. I've been Camjack. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'll be back with you with plenty more Spaces content in the next month. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.